Last year, 338,000 children were referred to child and adolescent mental health services in England, but only 31% received treatment within a year.
Now, a new report by the Champion for Young People praises improvements in some services, but suggests that changes aren't keeping apace with increasing demand. 17-year-old Elodie found it difficult to access support after suffering from severe anxiety in the run-up to her GCSEs.
In a school of 2,500, there was one school counsellor, which I wasn't able to see because my needs weren't dire enough. On my 16th birthday, I didn't celebrate. Instead, I went to the doctors for antidepressants. They turned me down because I hadn't been able to see the counsellor, the same counsellor that I'd been trying to see for years. I turned to my mum screaming and I said, the only way I'm going to get help is if I try to kill myself. I know my potential, I know what I can achieve, and I felt like I was given challenge after challenge after challenge after setback with no support, and therefore I couldn't achieve what I should have done.
Elodie speaking there, very bravely as well to speak on national television for us. We're joined now by mental health worker Suzanne Skeete and Richard Crellin, who's Policy and Research Manager at the Children's Society. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Suzanne, it's interesting you're doing what you're doing now because you yourself had experienced poor mental health at a very young age, so you can obviously sympathise very much with what Elodie was saying earlier on. How important is it that younger people recognise that they can be victims of poor mental health?
It's absolutely vital, and we constantly campaign to say, that things need to change. We are seriously letting our children down. The support that is out there, like we've just said previously, only 30%, 31% of those are actually getting support. They don't meet the criteria. I've personally taken people to hospital several times who are self-harming and also are suicidal. They don't meet the criteria.
What's the criteria?
Who knows? I actually don't know the criteria.
If they're self-harming?
Yeah, I actually don't know that criteria.
What are you told, though, when someone says, no, they don't meet the criteria?
Well, then, obviously, the work that we have to do is we just continue to work with that child until something's put in place. But
what do they say in terms of, oh, no, we can see they're self-harming?
They don't meet the criteria.
Can you enlighten us on that one, Richard, at all?
The NHS really struggles with this. There aren't enough mental health professionals. It's been underfunded for years and years. And so they really only deal with the highest need. And so you have young people who can be in desperate circumstances and there's no help for them. And it's down to charities like our own to do something about it, to stay with those young people and help them. But really, if we don't provide this help and support for our young people, we're setting them up for a really difficult future.
Isn't there the thought, and it's a thought, that if you're young, life can be traumatic and little things can seem huge and you grow out of that worrying stage. Is there still that kind of perception about mental health for young people?
Lots and lots of adults will say things like that, and professionals sometimes don't take children's concerns seriously. But we have to listen to young people and take them for what they say and believe in them. Because if we don't, and if we leave things, they do get worse. And instead of being able to get in there early and have a simple conversation about how do you cope with this anxiety, how do you cope with this low mood, you end up with people showing up at A&E, you end up with people in hospitals, and it's really awful for them.
You're nodding, Suzanne, but you can understand as well, I'm sure you must have seen it, that parents just say, well, we can't indulge them at every little thing. It's just a few, I'll express it again. Yeah. Every little thing they get upset at, this is life. They need to toughen up sometimes. There's also that thought, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we have to remember is that a child is defined by their first 6 years of life. So whatever they've experienced in that time actually shapes who they are, their belief patterns, their behaviours, obviously mental health, etc.
4 or 5 years old?
4 or 5 years old, absolutely. So whatever they've been through will define how they behave, how their mental health is and everything. And just as you said yourself, if we don't address these issues from an early age, then the situation just gets worse. It escalates. They go from, hurting themselves, like maybe just pinching themselves or slapping themselves or something, to, suicide attempts and serious self-harms. I mean, one of the things that I always do is give them a kit of self-harmers. So at the moment, 85% of my kids that I'm working with right now are self-harming. 85% of them. It's scary.
How many is that?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Now you've got maths first thing in the morning.
No.
I'm personally working with is about 16, 17 at the moment.
So about 12,
yeah.
13.
It's
Yeah.
interesting, Richard. We were talking on a slightly different health issue, the government minister this morning, and that's to do with care at home and doctors. Do you think the issue of resources ends up being an excuse for not helping people? You were saying about the point at which you're guaranteed to get some health, being the bar being so high. Is it simply set so high because they only have resources to deal with those people?
Yeah. Right now, the leaders of the NHS are sitting in a room trying to work out how to spend all of this money. And as you hear from this morning, older people's social care is going to eat up some of the money. But we really need to invest in children and young people. And no matter how much we talk about it and how much we ask for this money, locally people make decisions and divert money in different ways. So if you talk to frontline staff in the NHS, often they haven't seen this money that's been coming through because it gets diverted to other places. It's crucial that this plan, how we're going to be spending this money, makes sure that this money reaches the front line. Otherwise, we're setting children and young people up for the same they've been experiencing for the last decade.
Thank you both very much for your time this morning. Good to speak to you. It's a subject we often talk about here on Breakfast, and we will follow through and see what happens in the future. Thank you very much.
We should, Suzanne. Thank you.